In the fast-paced world of business, finding a clear path to profitability can be a challenge. Welcome to 0 to 100 with your host, Jared Guy Randolph, seasoned business and finance expert. Tune in for actionable insights and strategies to accelerate your business success.
Hello, Accelerators. Today on 0 to 100, I'm very excited to introduce our guest, David Worrell, who is a partner and CFO of FuseCFO, Fractional CFO Services. David has had an incredible career as an accomplished entrepreneur, analyst, and author of the Entrepreneur's Guide to Financial Statements. Intuit named David to its prestigious list of 100 global influencers in accounting and finance. He has founded and sold 3 companies successfully and was recognized 4 times as a Fast 50 award recipient for business growth. The topics that we're going to cover are super interesting for all of our entrepreneurs and business owners. First and foremost, it's working with simple numbers. And by the way, it's not as simple as it sounds, looks, something like that. Listen into this because simple numbers are actually a program and a technique for operating your business. We're also going to talk about what your ROI is on your business, the money that you're investing in the business, how you should be looking at what you are getting out of it, putting together the best financial dashboard for your business, and also creating predictive KPIs in your business. So you're looking forward, you're not just looking backwards. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Jared Guy Randolph. I am the founder of BoxFi. We are the nation's leading payment consultant, providing business growth solutions through payment processing. And I am very excited to share the network that I have built over my 25-year entrepreneurial journey to help you grow your business and become more profitable. Ladies and gentlemen, let's accelerate together. David Worrell, thank you for joining us on 0 to 100.
My pleasure to be here.
I am very excited to have you today because we're going to talk about running your business successfully. We're going to talk about fractional CFOs and what they can do to enhance and take your business to the next level. But before we do all of that, we have something far more important to discuss. You yourself, my friend, are a very successful businessman, and you have scaled 3 businesses and exited. Talk us through how you were able to replicate that model of scale successfully in 3 different businesses and how that's informed what you're doing today working with other business owners.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so first I'd say, success is relative, right? I have a lot of friends who are way more successful than I am and have scaled much larger than I have. But I have had 3 or 4 businesses and typically I get up to 10 or 15 or 20 employees before I personally feel completely overwhelmed and have to pull the parachute cord. I think, one lesson I've learned along the way is, who's the guy who said this? Good to great Jim Collins said, think of who, not how. Yeah. So every time I've wanted to do something that's just a little bit outside my comfort zone, I'm always tempted to go do it. And that's really fun, right? To live on the edge and learn something new. But ultimately, it's not scalable. And so if you really want to build a business and scale, you got to get right up to the edge of your comfort zone, and then you got to call an expert. And so being willing to find the who to do something new for you versus taking 6 months off of your life to go learn how to do something is a really powerful lesson for me. Because like a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm not the great delegator. I like to keep my fingers in everything, but who, not how has been a really powerful lesson.
It's funny. I'm looking at the book right now, Who, Not How, Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. Dan Sullivan and I don't know if it was the gentleman who wrote Good to Great came up with that concept first, or if it was Dan, but it doesn't matter. What matters is Dan Sullivan took Who, Not How to the next level in terms of, he didn't even write the book. It was Benjamin Hardy, his business partner, who he employed to write the book. And he literally went out and found somebody who truly was an expert at communications through writing. And he built something and wrote something that was incredibly successful. And to your point, it's all about bringing in the right people. So if we're talking about bringing in the right people, let's talk about why you started FuseCFO, Fuse Financial Group, why you started the company and how you integrate into the existing platforms for the clients that you work with today to help them achieve the success that they're looking to achieve?
Sure. So, to be totally honest, there were 4 of us at the beginning 14 years ago, and we were all middle-aged guys out of various aspects of accounting and corporate work. And we thought that we could go out and just be high-paid fractional CFOs. That was the cool buzzword 10 years ago. It's still a cool buzzword, But anyway, we thought we could go be high-paid fractional CFOs. And I remember one of our very first clients, it was a $40-50 million agricultural company. They had fields full of tomatoes and peppers, and we were standing on the processing floor, and they were putting peppers into boxes and bags and distributing them all over the country. Very cool business. We said, well, it looks like you got a great business here. Can we see your financial statements? And they kind of wrung their hands, and they called somebody who called somebody, and they brought out this financial statement. The P&L just by itself was like 15 pages long. I mean, it was forever. It was way more information than they could ever digest. And then we said, well, okay, that's kind of a P&L. I can see where you've at least got to start. How about the balance sheet? And their eyes got really wide and said, we don't have a balance sheet. We're not that big of a company. I said, well, every company has a balance sheet. Just theoretically, it exists. If you have $1 in the bank, you have a balance sheet. And so, we had our first pivot was we can't be smart, strategic CFOs if our clients can't produce basic financial statements. And we learned really early on that entrepreneurs are doers and they're not accountants. We need to show up as an outsourced finance department, an outsourced accounting department, and bring bookkeepers and clerks and controllers and CPAs. And then, you build this foundation, this really rock solid foundation of financial reporting and financial statements. And then you can do the cool strategic stuff and make cool life-changing decisions in your business about when to buy your building or when to hire 10 more people or how to put a fleet together. Whatever your big decisions are relies on solid accounting basics. And so somewhere in all of that was our reason to both do and teach entrepreneurs about how important finance is and about how they can use it as an additional quiver in their arrow to make their business more successful.
So let's talk about the teaching aspect, because I think that's really important. And what we do with 0 to 100 for our business owner and entrepreneur audience, try to provide some type of foundation of knowledge on how they should be looking at operating their business from a financial standpoint. What are some of the key components when you go into a business and you're going to educate them on how they streamline systems, how they get to the next level, how they make those buying decisions or those decisions to hire new employees? How do you go about it? What does your process look like?
Yeah, I love a good dashboard, frankly. And we've adopted a program called Simple Numbers. There's lots of kind of dashboardy things. There's Profit First, and there's EOS, and there's just, OKRs, KPIs. Anyway, we like this one called Simple Numbers. Developed by a CPA in Georgia named Greg Crabtree. And I've spoken personally with Greg a number of times, and I just like the way he thinks about business. And he says, no matter what business you're in, people are probably your largest expense, payroll, right? And if you can make those people as efficient as possible, your business is going to be efficient. Your business is going to grow. You need to measure and know how well you are training your people, whether the tools they have are right, and if they are empowered to make the kinds of decisions and snap judgments that are going to make your company more profitable and more sustainable. So we use Simple Numbers, and the name of the metric is called the direct labor efficiency ratio. The other side of that is the management labor efficiency ratio. And then the third thing is a return on invested cash, meaning the entrepreneur needs to know whether he's getting a good return on his investment in the business. So between those three things, I think we end up with a very powerful way to talk about your business, to see what's going on. Now, it's not an MRI scan of your business, right? It's taking your temperature and your blood pressure and saying, I think we have a problem over here. Let's talk about that more deeply. But it almost always points you in the right direction for a great strategic discussion.
So if you're looking at creating those efficiencies with your employees, and this is a bit outside of the financial spectrum, what do you see the most successful businesses doing to build an employee culture where there is communication and collaboration so each employee is actually maximizing their value?
Well, first of all, I'm thrilled that you said the word culture and communication, because that's what being a small business guy is all about, right? You're never going to get people to love coming to work and to do great things for their customers if you're not making it a place that they can love and doing great things for them. So, I consider my role to be chief culture officer, and that involves everything from just regular recognition. And, my dad used to call them attaboys, where you just call somebody up and say, attaboy, you're doing a great job. Let me send you a $50 Amazon card because I really love the way you handled that customer problem the other day. Yeah, attaboys. We're all virtual now, which has made culture much more difficult. So we actually have in-person quarterly or semi-annual meetings. And we nurture the relationship between our staff members. So we've said something really interesting, which is within our six key values that we have, we've got the letter V. It spells out thrive. And the letter V stands for vulnerability, which is to say, be willing to raise your hand and say, I don't know something, right? Because when you're on a team of 8 or 10 really smart people, somebody else is going to know and is going to keep you from thrashing around and wasting a lot of time and becoming frustrated with your work. So anyway, core values is one super strong key to developing a great culture. And I think one of those values that's often overlooked is encouraging the team to come together to help each other in meaningful ways. We do that through the vulnerability aspect.
So I'm going to put you on the spot, since you said that it was 6 things and it spells out thrive. Walk me through what your company culture is based around for each one of those letters for the acronym or the word.
Yeah. T for teamwork. And we didn't used to have thrive. We used to just call it teamwork, but that was a little confusing. So now teamwork is being willing to help someone else, right? That's the flip side of vulnerability, which is asking for help. So T for teamwork, H for high tech, high touch. The world is not getting any less tech centric, right? It's not becoming any simpler. So the more that we can deploy technology to solve customer problems, the more accurate and quickly we're going to get our job done. And the more time then we have to spend with our customers doing the really important, really valuable stuff of being that educator, that teacher, that confidant and counselor, right? So H is high tech, high touch. I got that from the 90s in Silicon Valley, if any of your listeners are that old. R is responsiveness. And that just means that when a customer calls, you got 24 hours to call them back, even if the answer is, I'll get back to you later. I is vulnerability. E is excellence. So you got to do a great job. And I is integrity, of course, because you can't be an accountant handling anybody else's money without being honest and having deep personal integrity. And of course, that's just table stakes for working with somebody else's money.
Oh God, it's incredibly important having that integrity. And you work with a lot of businesses. So I'd love to hear how you take your core values and incorporate it into when you're educating and helping these businesses get to the next level. But you're working with a lot of businesses, I believe, that are like $1 million to 10 million, not all of them, but many of them are $1 million to 10 million in annual revenue. What challenges do you see them facing? Are they the same through that spectrum, or is it very different for a company that's at $1 million versus 10 million? And how do you overcome them?
Yeah, I think the folks that are attracted to us and the people that are our ideal customer have very similar problems. They are fantastic operators, right? They're doctors who know how to heal people. They're bakers who know how to make cakes. They're software guys. We have a lot of tech companies and filmmakers. And so they make a great product, right? They're operators. But you would never expect everybody to be great accountants or bookkeepers or CFOs. They're great operators. They need to understand finance at just a deep enough level that they can make terrific decisions, right? They don't want to be an accountant. They would go back to school for that. They don't want to be a bookkeeper. They pay other people to do that. But they need to understand the finances well enough, or let's call it the financial results well enough to make hard decisions. That doesn't mean they need to understand debits and credits. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to worry about whether your, the receipt for gasoline goes in travel expenses or automobile expenses. Forget all that. Right. They need to understand, after all of that is done, how do you make decisions from the resulting information that comes out? So we often describe our role as, first, a black box, right? We just want to be the accounting department inside a black box. You don't have to worry about it. When you come to Fuse, you get worry-free accounting. And then what comes out of the box gives us a chance to have deep, meaningful, educational, insightful discussions about your business. So, Jared, are you getting a return on your investment in your business better than you would get in the stock market? Are you taking home enough money to be happy? Should you buy a fancy new sports car this year so you can write it off on your taxes? I mean, some people have the other problem, right? They have too much money. But we like to focus on the financial results and teach people how to run the business based on that.
You've talked about twice now the return on investment for the operator. How are you defining that? Is that money just going into the business? I think there may be a parallel between what you're paying your employees and the return you're getting out of the success that they're having. How do you define that for the business owners that you're working with?
Yeah, good question. The return you're getting for what you pay your employees, that's called the direct labor efficiency ratio. So that's the first part of simple numbers. And then the return on invested cash, without diving too deep into the math here, let's say that you are you make lemonade, you sell lemonade at a lemonade stand. You are invested in inventory. So you've got money tied up in your inventory. You've got money tied up in the operating expenses each month before maybe you pretend that you bill for your lemonade and you get paid at the end of the month, right? Like most of us do. You've got money tied up in your accounts receivable. And while you're waiting to get paid, you've got money tied up in things like operating expenses, like wages. So this formula in simple numbers, and it's not all that complicated, but it adds up all of the cash that it took you, the founder, to invest in your company to get it started and keep it running. And for any folks who are really into this, that's called the cash cycle, right? And I have lots of videos about cash cycle, and we can talk about AR and AP days outstanding. But anyway, there's a number I can put on it to tell you how much cash you have invested in your business. And you compare that very simply to the amount of profit you make each year. So if it takes me, I've got about $150,000 invested in Fuse. And if I make $150,000 profit each year, which is not out of reach, I've got a 100% return on capital. 100%. I made last year was a pretty good year in the stock market, but most years in the stock market, you make an average of 6, 8, maybe 10% in the stock market. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about the average return on invested capital for an entrepreneur who knows how to run his business, who's got they call it a flywheel going, right? Who's got a good operating business, is 50 to 150% per year, every year. Man, that makes you stop and think about, hey, I got an extra $5,000 at the end of this month. Should I bring it home and, redecorate the living room, or should I reinvest it in the company? And boy, if I can make 150% on that every year, then that $5,000 turns into $7,500 this year, and $7,500 next year, and $7,500 the year after that.
Exactly.
The trick, of course, is you got to know where to invest it. And that, I think, requires a little more thought and discussion.
Very interesting. Let's talk a little bit before we move on to talking about managing your numbers and financial accuracy. Some of the work that you've done within the entrepreneurial community in Charlotte, North Carolina, and how you've leveraged that network of giving back into building the success that you have today. And the reason I'm asking is because I think business owners, from what I see, downplay the importance of being part of the community, of giving back, of integrating into their network, into what they do to help build their business.
Yeah, I agree that too many of us get stuck inside of our bubble. And now that we can work remotely, we literally get stuck inside of our homes and we don't go out enough, right? I just love what I do. And in particular, I love that zone of, what do you call it? The zone of inspiration or genius is, for me, is teaching people about just enough about their business that they can use the numbers to operate. And so I volunteered at 3 or 4 accelerators that are in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I live. Many of them deal with what do we call them? Minority and traditionally underserved entrepreneurs. Some of them are focused on women who are transitioning out of the corporate careers and starting their first businesses. But I love just going into these classroom environments and teaching that. And it does a couple of things for me. First of all, it's just rewarding. I would do it if I were retired. But secondly, not only are you networking with people who might one day become your customers, those students that you're teaching, but to me, you're elevating yourself, putting yourself out there as a thought leader, and you're building networks with the other people who are teaching and the people who are running those incubators. So I know some of the, most active, most successful business people in town simply because I volunteered a few hours a week to go teach at an incubator where they have also invested their time and energy and resources to be at. So we end up sitting on boards together and being in meetings together and trying to solve problems for this particular entrepreneur together. It's very bonding. And it always results in long-term growth, not just personal growth. I certainly learn a lot, but it also ends up resulting in long-term business growth because people know you, like you, trust you, recognize you as an expert, and call you.
Yes. It's a concept that I like to call buying favor. It's like buying favor and not to get religious, but buying favor in the eyes of God was where you might have heard that in context. And for me, what I've realized is the more I give back to the community, the more I give to others, the more I add value, they want to add value in return. And what we don't recognize is that it's normally one phone call away, that next client, that next opportunity. It is one meeting away. It's one dinner. It's one volunteer session away. Getting integrated with your community to grow your business is so, so important. And it might seem as if it's an intangible, but it's not. It is super tangible just from the examples that you just gave on how you've ended up on boards, done business together, developed relationships, picked up clients. You have to do this. It's really important.
I recently moved from Charlotte to Asheville, by the way. That's a whole story about Hurricane Helene, and won't go there. But I'm feeling really like I'm on an island right now. I have got to start rebuilding my network in the Asheville locale, and reaching out and meeting some people. I still have to drive back to Charlotte to do that right now, which is fine. But I'm just feeling really lonely in Asheville.
I'm going to plug this book. And I don't mean to be plugging it, but I just reviewed it for my Sunday book review that I do on. But Mel Robbins, I'll tell you the biggest takeaway for me on this book was she talked about adults and how adults build relationships and how when we're younger and when we're school, we kind of have our tribes because from grade school to high school, we graduate, we travel along that journey typically with the same people unless you move. And then you go to college and then you start to see that separation happen. People go in different directions. They pick different career paths. They create different communities. And it really is tough for adults to create those relationships. So you actually have to put in an effort when you're at your coffee shop. Say hello to the people that you see there consistently. She talked about one example where she ended up talking to this couple who had a young child. She saw him at the coffee shop every day in this little tiny town that she moved to after living in Boston for years. And come to find out, one of them was a psychologist on mindset, and the other one was a podcast production company director. And that's literally what Mel Robbins does. And she's like 6 months into seeing them at the coffee shop every other day, I realized that there was massive synergy, and she built an awesome friendship with them. So get out there and have those conversations which might seem awkward. We're all and she also talked about it's really geographical. As adults, if you're not in front of somebody, it's really tough to keep that relationship with the friend the same way you used to that no longer lives next door. They're 5 states away. Even if it's, some towns away, you can be in the same state and feel like a total different place. But get out there and make those connections. It'll help build.
Nothing happens until you get away from your desk and you get out in the community. And it's one thing to hang out on Zoom calls and Facebook groups, something completely different to be in person, face to face with 1 or 10 or 100 people at a mixer in your city. Wow. There's just nothing like it. And I tell my sales guys the same thing, and they don't believe me until they try it. And then, oh, hey, I made a sale.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about some of the nitty gritty stuff, and let's dive into cash flow. Cash flow can be one of the biggest reasons and the main reasons that businesses fail. So talk to me about ways that you can be creative to improve your cash flow as a business owner and how you educate business owners to do so.
So first, I got to tell a little story about myself. I'm almost embarrassed to tell you this, but there was a time maybe 7-8 years ago when I had a big client leave. I just wasn't managing very well. And at the end of that year, I had made a total revenue, right? Total billing of like $600,000 or $700,000 in my business. Mm. We were still ramping up, trying to get started, struggling. And I had to write off $150,000 of bad debt that year. Mm. And that just was like a knife to the heart, right? I mean, that was 20% of my revenue. I thought of it as 2.5 months worth of work just flushed down the toilet. So I swore to myself, I will never write off bad debt again. I will do anything that it takes to not have bad debt and to improve my cash flow to the point where I can take home more money. And I think this is a fine point that a lot of entrepreneurs miss. When you improve your cash flow, there's more cash in the bank for you to take home at the end of each month, right? If a business goes from 60 days terms on their invoices to 30 days terms, you've just increased the amount of cash in the bank by an entire month's worth of billing. For me, that's $100,000. If there's an extra $100,000 in my bank account at any given time, man, how happy are you? And how much easier does that make your whole life? So here's a couple of quick tips. Number one, have a good process in your proposals to your customers. My proposal now includes an ACH form. If you don't want to pay me by ACH on the 10th day following my invoice, you are not my customer. I'm sorry. Number two, when you onboard that customer, make sure that the invoices are going to the right person, that you're communicating with not just the decision maker, but also the check writer, that you've given them all the information they need, like a W-9 form, bank and routing information if they're going to pay you by ACH. I prefer to literally pull the ACH out of your account and take your money for my bill. But occasionally it goes the other direction. And then don't let it go too long, right? When you have a collections problem, back to who, not how, send it to a collections agency. Wait, give them the benefit of the doubt, work with them professionally, over communicate, get them to commit to paying it, but don't wait more than 60 days to try to save a friendship. You've got to get paid, and a collections agency will do that a lot more proficiently than you will.
Mm. That's sage advice, and those are some things that I actually have not heard. I love the ACH form, getting paid on day 10, and if they're not paying you on day 10, they're not your customer, because you can't afford to float someone else's business, and that really truly is key.
But by day 10, I've already floated their business for 40 days, right? I've paid my employee to work for them for 40 days. So yeah, man, I'm not a staffing agency.
I didn't even think about that, because you've got the work that goes into it, the 30 days, and then plus an extra 10 days. Yeah. Wow. So the efficiency of collecting that money it's tantamount to success for your business. Wow. That's awesome.
Obviously, there's a lot of aspects to cash flow, right? You could talk about limiting your inventory or paying your bills more slowly or negotiating for terms with your creditors, all that kind of stuff. But for me personally, it was always about collections because I was just sick and tired of sending an invoice, not getting paid, and then realizing I had the wrong customer and I was never going to get paid and I just got to write it off.
That is 100% rough. So you mentioned something really earlier, and I'm assuming what we just discussed may be on this, but I'd love you to walk me through what a quality dashboard, a quality financial dashboard looks like for a business owner.
Excellent. Well, so I always start with the simple numbers dashboard. That's those 3 or 4 metrics we talked about: labor efficiency, management efficiency, and return on capital. And those are things that are measured right out of your financial statements. But the problem with that is all of those are what we call trailing indicators. They tell me what happened last month. And so I can come to you and I can say, Jared, man, you've got 12 employees and their efficiency is dropping down. What's going on? Did you guys have more vacation time or too many meetings, or maybe you're not giving them good enough tools to do their job? What's wrong with this? But it's a trailing indicator, right? What you really want your dashboards to focus on is predictive indicators, or leading indicators, they call them. So a really good KPI, key performance indicator, is something that looks into the future. And the easiest one to think about is, let's take the example. I have a client who sells hubcaps on a website. Sounds like a simple business, but you know what he's got to keep an eye on every week is the number of people who visit his website, because he knows before you can buy a hubcap, you've got to click through, and before you can click through, you got to visit the website. I mean, it's the top of the sales funnel. And so the number of visits he can get, or maybe you could look at, where do I rank on Google, or how many people searched for my term, or what is the price of rice in China? Whatever it is that you can say drives my business, that is the top of the funnel leading indicator. And keeping an eye on that is just one of the most important things. Identify as many of those KPIs or leading indicators as you can, and then look at efficiency metrics and other metrics that are specific for your industry. So if you're in the retail industry, let's say you have a bricks and mortar storefront and you're selling candles, the numbers that retailers need to watch are things like how many cars drive past my strip mall on any given day. And that the city knows that number, right? The county counts how many cars at least once a year. They go through and they do an audit of where is all the traffic. So you can find out how many cars pass by. Or you want to be a little more specific, how many people actually came into my store. That's a pretty cool leading indicator. Then you get into the really specific industry metrics, like what's my dollars per square foot? So I have 1,000 square foot store. Can I sell $1 million a year? Well, if so, I need to be doing $1,000 per square foot. And on a monthly basis, that's $80 per square foot. So now you know how much you need to sell for each square foot in your store. And the last thing that I almost always insist every entrepreneur keeps track of is my break-even number. And man, I could talk forever about break-even number, but if you don't know what your break-even number is, and by the way, it's a super simple formula, total overhead cost divided by gross margin as a percentage of sales. So overhead divided by GM percentage. But setting the math aside, if you know your break even, now you've got a real tangible target to shoot for. And you know you've got to get out of bed every morning and sell X number of widgets or Y number of service hours just to keep the lights on. And you don't go home for dinner until you've sold that many and a little bit more, because you don't want to just break even in this business. You want to make some money. And I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but my last tangent is make sure that in your forecast and in your break-even calculation, you've included salary for yourself. So many entrepreneurs forget to pay themselves, forget to budget to pay themselves. And a break-even is not a break-even if the CEO is not taking home a salary. So add your CEO's salary in there first, then calculate your break-even, and then wake up every morning and hit that goal.
So why was there this mindset of not paying yourself or paying yourself last as an entrepreneur? Where did that come from?
God, it's terrible head trash, right? I'm not worthy. I'm stupid. I'm an imposter. I'm not good enough. I'm not as smart as the next guy. We all have it, man. It's just part of being human. I've had it worse than anybody at times in my life. And I think you've just got to plow through all of that head trash and start believing that, hey, for me, maybe it's your wife, right? Maybe it's your dog and cat that like to eat good food or need a surgery or something. You've got to admit to yourself, it costs me X to live the life that I want.
Right.
Maybe compare it to if you had a real job, right? You've come out of corporate America. You were used to make $75,000 or $175,000, whatever it was. Start there. I've got to replace my salary, or I got to feed myself, or I want to go to Europe twice a year. Set a budget, and then that's what you've got to earn.
Well, this is, and I don't necessarily think that the majority of our audience of business owners and entrepreneurs suffer this, but it used to be, and I remember hearing this earlier on in my career, and it was always it felt wrong to me to hear a wealthy investor say, well, you should take as little as you possibly can, or you shouldn't pay yourself. All the money should be going to the business. That's really easy for you to say. It's also easy to say for you to say when it's really not your check. That's family money, and generationally, you've never understood what it was to actually have to work to freaking pay bills. And it's if your CEO is starving, they can't function at their best. It's like, and I learned this, I learned in terms of from some of the clients that I had years ago back in the real estate world, from the sales side, that like take a Goldman Sachs, for instance. Their executives were always in a black car driving around New York. Had nothing to do with pomp and circumstance. It wasn't because they were going to yoga class. It was because every minute cost them money. And you cannot have an executive in a subway missing a phone call. To have an executive have to wait to get into coach versus flying first class, where they sit you down, they get your drink, you hook up the internet, and you start working before you even take off because you're not standing around waiting another 45 minutes. They were calculating down to the minute how much they were losing by not doing those things. So they afforded their executives certain things and a lot of their management, their mid-level, senior management, etc. So there's been this really odd mentality when you're a startup business that you shouldn't get paid. And I'm sorry, if you are hungry, if you're not sleeping well, you're not thinking 100%, and it's going to take you that much longer to build a true successful business.
Yeah, I negotiated venture capital deals in Silicon Valley back in the first kind of dot-com boom in the late 90s. And I remember hearing that a lot. But it was also two-sided. Most of the VC or angel that I knew would say, we want to pay you enough that you don't have to worry about things, right? You're not worried about your rent or starvation or where you're going to sleep tonight, but not so much that you get fat and lazy and happy.
Oh, yeah.
Keep you hungry, right? And when it's their money that's becoming your salary, I think they have a right to say that.
Yes.
When you're not a big venture funded startup, but you're let's say a 2-year-old borderline lifestyle business, you're an insurance agent or a dog walker or a ice cream shop or a software company. I love, these SaaS companies that are all over the place now. When you're a SaaS company and you're building something, man, if you're not putting 100% into it at the beginning, you're probably cheating yourself. But pretty soon you've got to budget and figure out how am I going to take that money home? Because nobody can live on air, right?
100%.
Yeah. Just not for you.
Are you advising, or actually, hopefully you're advising, maybe the question should be, how are you advising your clients right now to look at integrating AI into their operations of their businesses?
God, that is so hard, man. I know this, it's going to change every day. And probably by the time you put this interview on the web, it'll be completely different again. But I don't see AI working in the niche businesses. So, for example, as an accountant, I know that there are AI-based products that can do certain things and they help a little bit. But it's not to the point where you just say, "Hey Siri, please file my taxes for me," right? Or you touch your watch and you say, "Reconcile my bank account." We're not quite there yet. People like to think we are, and I know that's where we're headed. So you got to be watching it. But, man, I just think we all need to be aware at this point. I think it's it's possible that you go too far down that rabbit hole today and you get lost. Number one, there are a million companies that call themselves AI companies, just like there were a million companies in 1999 that called themselves .coms. And I'm old enough to have lived through, and I saw what happened to pets.com and home.com and all these things that lasted about 6 months, blew through a bunch of money, and then went away. So if you've invested the last 3 months in learning some AI tool that you think is really cool, I can't guarantee it's going to be around in 3 more months, right? Things could change so radically, and I've seen it happen. I'm waiting for, and I'm using the tools that are integrated into big software platforms that already exist. I'm trying not to use the little tiny niche things that do 1 or 2 things really well. Even though they're super cool, I want to learn about them. I just don't want to make them part of my critical path, because until Intuit puts it into QuickBooks, it's probably not going to be something I can count on sticking around for the long term.
So are you seeing AI creating efficiencies in the accounting arena, though?
I've had people tell me it's true, but personally, I'm skeptical for now, right? I'm keeping my eye on it. I'm trying to learn as much as I can and watch as many tools. I know a lot of tools. I just don't see, where's the beef? Now I'm really giving away my age. I just don't see the meat on the bone yet.
Right. Okay. Very, very interesting. Yeah. AI is, from a marketing standpoint, it's been incredible.
Oh yeah.
From us. There are certain things, like when it comes to sales, that you still have to have that human connection.
Yeah.
It's created a ton of efficiencies. I mean, even for instance, running a podcast, the way that we've been doing it, there's no way I would have been able to do this a year ago.
Is that right?
The efficiencies that AI has created. And it allows me to do things like connect with wonderful people like you, to have you on our podcast.
Yeah. Jared, I have something on my calendar right now that says how to create and run a podcast entirely on AI, start to finish. It's an entire AI. There's no real people. So I might have to ask you, can you prove you're real?
Yeah, I was going to say, I am actually a robot. I am not real. I wish that you could, and maybe you can, maybe I'm just not that proficient. I've learned to communicate very well and have a conversation with AI. And here's the thing that people don't understand. AI is not a technology. AI is an intelligence. But what you get out of AI is only as good as your input. The output is only as good as the input. So if you don't learn to communicate with it, and that's what I'm focused on right now, it'll obviously change the business that I'm in on the payment processing and merchant service business. But to your point, it's still not there. There's more that has to go, because there's so many nuance. And one of the problems is if I create a clone of myself and it has all my knowledge of merchant services and payment processing, and I say to a merchant, talk to my clone, they don't know what questions to ask. They don't know, the inefficiencies in their system or how to communicate it properly to actually get the right answer. AI does a good job, but it's not perfect, and it's not replacing the human being yet. Some businesses, it's going to replace human beings, or it's going to make human beings more efficient. That's what the hope is, or allow them to, again, develop soft skills, because those soft skills, like selling human to human, are really going to be very important moving forward as we see more progress with AI.
I love using AI. I mean, it's a language tool, right? LLM, large language models. It works with words much better than numbers. So in my world, you can appreciate it's lagging a little bit. But I love, in fact, my whole team, I insist that they use AI to help them write emails. So yes. You can imagine accountants are not great word people. But I'll say, if you're struggling, put it in AI, let AI write the thing. Even if you copy and paste a little bit, we're good with that. Because I'd rather you be clear and concise and robust in your communication rather than screw something up. So we do use it for a lot of language tasks. I love it for writing blogs and reports and due diligence on businesses that are being bought and sold. I get involved in a lot of M&A these days, and I can upload a 300-page PDF document or 300 different PDF documents for due diligence on a merger transaction and start asking it very specific questions. And it's just fantastic.
Yeah, it truly is. It truly is. Well, Before we get into the rapid fire section, there's one more question that I want to ask you because I think this is really important because of your background, the success you've had. So you were named to Intuit's 100 Global Influencers in Accounting and Finance. So you really kind of have a more global, pun intended, perspective on the industry. What are some of the trends in financing and accounting that you think business owners should be paying attention to in today's market?
Yeah. Well, we covered AI, right? But certainly you've got to have an eye on that. Yeah. Technology in general is just getting really cool. There are some amazing tools. I like to use Ramp. It's a credit card that a lot of folks understand and already use, but it's an entirely different way of looking at expense management and credit card, issuing credit cards to your employees. And so there's just so much fintech, we call it, right? Financial technology and fintech software. I've got one called Fanatical software that basically gives you a connection between Excel and QuickBooks Online. And so you can build models in Excel that reference your real-time QuickBooks data. It's just fantastic.
Wow.
So number one, technology. Number two, keep an eye on AI. But number three, I think we're going to see more. We already see more and more fraud in the finance business. And if you are an entrepreneur who is, not keeping up, if you're writing paper checks, you are hugely susceptible to fraud. If your employees are not well trained on cyber fraud and cyber attacks, you're going to pay dearly. And, that's one of the things that just scares me the most, especially about AI, is as the bad actors begin adopting AI, man, it makes them just as much more powerful as it would you, right? So we're in a bit of an arms race, and I almost got suckered into a scam the other day. They're just getting so good. I had to check and squint and recheck and call somebody before I just said, this can't be real. And it wasn't. I saved myself, $500 that they were trying to scam me out of. But it took me a second to figure it out. Whereas 3, 4, 5 years ago, you'd be like, oh yeah, this guy didn't spell the word right. His email address was wrong. It's, the colors are off. It's obviously a scam. It's not so dang obvious anymore, brother. It's really hard.
That is very true. That is very true. All right, my friend, it is time for the rapid fire section. You ready to go?
I guess so.
All right. Coffee or tea?
I'm a coffee guy. Black coffee and whiteboards. I'm all about that.
It's a zombie apocalypse. You've got to get out of your house and protect your family. What is your weapon of choice?
I can have any weapon I want. I mean, nuclear bomb or something. I don't know. Like a flamethrower sounds like fun.
Yes, that is my answer. You're the only other person who has said a flamethrower. I've got a lot of guests. That is my answer. Good man. Yes. Great minds think alike. Wow, I got way too excited there.
Yeah, well, you don't have to be very accurate with a flamethrower, right? It's kind of broad and also kind of fun.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite phrase or quote that you think of often and use in business?
Well, I shared with you already the who, not how. I spoke to Elon Musk once dozens of years ago when he was still a cool business guy and not a politician. And he said, hire slow, fire fast, which, not groundbreaking, but pretty darn important.
Love it.
Pay yourself first. Pay yourself first. That's really my favorite one.
Pay yourself first. Is there a book that you would recommend our audience read?
Well, I wrote a book called The Entrepreneur's Guide to Financial Statements. You can find that on Amazon and at a lot of libraries. I also like the books on culture building, which we touched on earlier. There's one called Lead Your Tribe, Love Your Work. Love Your Work, Lead Your Tribe. I can't remember now, but another one called Leaders Eat Last. And I think that was a really, if you're into the kind of Malcolm Gladwell science and psychology side of things, Leaders Eat Last is very cool. It talks about how the military builds its culture of leadership. And then if you're not really that kind of a science sociology guy, then this Love Your Work, Lead Your Tribe is much more fun. It talks about a small business and what kind of toilet paper you buy for your employee office bathrooms. I mean, it's just every nitpicky detail.
I love it. What are 3 money-saving strategies that you have for this year you would suggest our business owners implement?
don't know if I can get to 3. I usually do. But number 1, look at your credit card statement religiously every month, because you never know what you're going to find there. It's kind of where the rubber meets the road. As you're looking at that, look for subscriptions. There was once I looked at my card and I realized I was paying for, something like 12 licenses for Adobe Acrobat at $15 each. And even though $100 a month might not seem like a lot to some people, man, over and over and over again, you're not using those 15 licenses. Cut. And today, it's so easy to go sign up for new SaaS subscriptions, right? You got Adobe, you got Monday.com, you got whatever. Make sure that you're turning those things off when you're not using them, or turning them off as fast as you're turning a new one on, right? As you upgrade. And then money saving. Gosh.
That one in particular is really important, because I had like somehow 3 different Apple subscriptions to the exact same thing, because I upgraded, but they didn't cancel the other ones. And it was only like an extra $80, but it's ridiculous that someone, it's the same product and they didn't tell me. Like, that's my own great example.
Yeah. Back to our who.how, my third suggestion would be who.how. Outsource it to a company like ERA, and I'm not endorsing them. I don't know them very well, but they're a national firm, Expense Reduction Analysts. That's both a company name and kind of a general term for people that specialize in going in and helping you cut your overhead by holding your vendors accountable to contracts and agreements. And they can cut, all the fat out of things like phone bills and raw materials and stuff like that. So negotiate with your vendors. Be willing to ask, because if you don't ask for a discount or better terms, you're certainly not going to get it.
I love it. Ask for a discount from your vendors. Otherwise, you're not going to get it. That's great. Yeah. And the last but not least question, give me 2 people in your life who have helped you get to the level of success that you have today in your business.
Oh man. First guy is, an old mentor of mine, came out of Nabisco. His name's Bill Manby. God rest his soul. He passed about a dozen years ago, but I loved Bill. He was, when I first landed in California, I was 25, 26 years old, and Bill was 59, 60, 65 years old. So he was the old wise guy with gray hair, and I was the young buck with stars in my eyes. And he would often tell me, you got to go slow to go fast. You got to go slow to go fast. And silly stuff like never let them see you sweat. So get a mentor. For me, it was Bill Manby. The other one is my brother, Jim. He and I have been in business on and off for a couple of iterations of our careers. And he's just a real go-getter, man. He's classic type A entrepreneur. And it was interesting to see how Jim, it just doesn't hesitate. And he picks up the phone and he calls somebody. You got a question? Let's call somebody. I mean, maybe now you do Google, but Jim would just pick up the phone and call somebody. And he's the guy who taught me, you never make a sale until you get out from under your desk, or get out from behind your desk and get out in the real world and make a sale.
Love it. Love it. David, please tell everyone where they can connect with you if they would like to do so.
I'm happy to, and I'd love to have conversations with new people. FuseCFO.com is on the screen there, FuseCFO.com. There's a page with my book on it. You can buy that on Amazon. David at FuseCFO.com is my direct email address. I welcome you there. And I've got a very cool YouTube channel, if I do say so myself. I'm working hard on that, and there are a lot of lessons. Tried to make them bite-sized, some as short as 30 seconds, some more like 30 minutes. But we've got a YouTube channel, YouTube/FuseCFO, I think. But if you search for FuseCFO on YouTube, you'll find me.
Awesome. David Worrell, thank you for joining us on 0 to 100.
Thank you, Jared. It was a blast, man. And I hope that leads to lots of success among your listeners.
Thanks for tuning in to 0 to 100 podcast. We hope you feel inspired and ready to accelerate your business. Remember, your journey to success starts with a single step. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving for greatness. For more resources and show notes, visit jaredguyrandolph.com. We'll see you next time.